So we've got our straightened strips, we've pressed the nodes both sides and they're nice and straight. So now we're going to start planing them into our triangles. Call this part rough planing. And first of all, I'm just going to straighten up the edges. So I'm just going to use my plane. I've freshly sharpened this. I'm just going to quickly square up these edges. And this just makes it easier when I put them in the planing forms. Okay, so we've straightened up the edges around the nodes. Now the back, which we just planed quickly with the belt sander, I'm just going to run the plane over it a couple of times just to flatten that and make it easier to plane. Now to get the angles on the cane, I'm going to use the final planing forms. I've already set the groove in these to slightly larger than I need for the finished rod. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the strip in the planing forms and we're going to keep this outside edge always touching either side of the planing forms. And we're going to plane and turn the strip regularly. So we're never going to plane this edge, we're going to plane this side and this side, and as we keep planing it's gradually going to form into the triangles that we want. So if we get the plane, again the first pass is barely taking anything, we're just taking the very corner off, and as we keep planing these corners will slowly form into the triangles that we need. So again, just being careful, trying to keep the plane nice and level and flat. We're just going to take a pass or two on each side. And as the angle starts to form, it will sit further and further into the groove on the planing forms. And I'll just keep watching and see which side I need to take more material off to give us a nice equilateral triangle. You can hear now we're taking slightly more cane off with each pass. And that's as the angle starts to develop on the edge. Feel now from the plane that we're taking more off with each pass. The angle's starting to form on this edge. You can just see the triangle starting to form there and there. Keep going, I can see I need to take a little bit more off this side that I'm planing now. I want to do it evenly, so flip it over. Maybe take one or two passes off this side and then a little bit more off the other side. I can feel now that we're starting to plane away a lot of the piffy material on the inside of the plane. It's starting to get a little bit tougher. And that's because the piff's going and we're just left with the tough power fibres now. Planes taking a bigger cut each time. evenly again now, so we'll take an even number of passes off each side. Look at this end again. We've got to a nice point on each end. Got a little flat on the top, and that's just because it's so big at the moment. Once that gets planed down a bit more, we'll get to a nice point and an equilateral triangle. But at this stage, we're still leaving strips of bamboo quite a lot bigger than we need them. When we've finished planing this last strip, we'll bind them all together and then we'll get heat treated in my oven. And then we'll start to reduce them down to the final tapers. You'll see from the straightening that I did earlier, they're sitting nicely in the forms with no bends or kinks. It just makes it a lot easier to play when they're not so straight. Again, these big thick butt strips of the coarse rods, they're a lot tougher to plane than say a small flower rod. Just because the amount of power fibres that are left in it. As I said, I left these planing forms a little bit larger than the actual finished size of the rod, but even so I'm not going to plane down flush to the forms because I want to leave plenty of cane left for a bit later on when I plane the final tapers. We'll just take a few more passes on either side. We've got a nice equilateral triangle there, and you can see we've planed away all the piths, and now all we're left with is the dark black power fibres. We've got a little bit more to come off that, so that'll get even thicker and denser as we're finished. I'm just going to take another couple of passes on this side. Another one on this side, even it up. Now we've got a nice triangular strip. We've reached a point on each edge all the way down, so we know the strip's long enough. What we'll do, we'll put it with our other strips which I've already planed. What we'll do now is we'll bind them up, and then they will be ready to be heat treated along with the tip section. We'll get just some pure cotton thread which can handle heat. There we go, and we bind them together. Just now starting to look a little bit like a fishing rod. You notice we've still got all of the enamel layer on the cane, apart from just a little bit where the nodes are. We'll remove this when we do the final planing, but we're going to try and leave it on for as long as possible. Again, as I'm binding it up, you can see how the node spacings work. If you go here, we've got a node on this strip, then no node, then a node on this strip, then one without, and then another one there. And that's what we call a 3x3 pattern. Okay, so we're going to bind it all the way down to the end, and then we're going to come back on ourselves, form a nice crisscross pattern. So we'll wrap it all the way to the end of the section, and then I'll just like to tuck the thread in between two of the sections, hold it nice and tight, and there we go. So we've now got the tip section and the butt section ready to be baked in the heat treating oven. Notice that the tip section is longer than the butt section. And if you remember earlier, we said this butt section is going to be spliced into a piece of whole cane. In fact, it's going to be a wooden dowel on this rod. So we'll splice that into a wooden dowel, and we'll build the cork handle over the wooden dowel.